All right, let's talk Los Angeles Rams. One of the things on this channel we've been very consistent with is that the Rams are one of the top teams in football. We've been saying that going into the season, and the Rams, led by, of course, Sean McVay as the head coach, have proven us right. And they've got more news that has come out recently that I think points to one of the reasons why they're so successful and why they will continue to be going forward. It's not just they're smart, it's their approach from a leadership perspective and everything that falls from that. We'll get into that reporting and some interesting data as always. But first, I am Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Los Angeles Rams, we've covered it ad nauseum. They're one of, if not the smartest team in football. How do they handle the offseason, scheme, personnel packages, Sean McVay leading his staff? They check every single box in terms of what A-plus programs do. But there's also a leadership aspect of it that comes into play because you're dealing, obviously, not computers. You're dealing with men. You're dealing with football players. So you need to have the right leader. You need to have the right frame of mind. And one of the things I love about Sean McVay, despite clearly being one of the best minds in football today, being one of the best head coaches in football today, is his approach. And I think what he recently did is probably one of his most important moves yet, even though it didn't grab all the headlines. Let's pull up this article here, courtesy of Rams Wire. Then we'll get into the data on the other side. Sean McVay admitted on the Coach McVay show Monday that Ferguson, talk about rookie tight end Terrence Ferguson, impressed him on the scout team to the point where he felt dumb about not finding more ways to get the rookie tight end involved. I'll be honest with you, a lot of stuff that he showed where he made those guys better, you're saying, how dumb am I to not figure out ways to get this guy involved, McVay said. And a lot of things that were kind of unfolding on the scout team where he's making plays and you can't help but notice them. You're saying, well, shoot, man, why don't we put some of those plays in? And he started to bring those things to life in the opportunities that you've seen. All right, so a lot of this is, of course, McVay recognizing that Terrence Ferguson, obviously had some injuries, a slow start to his NFL career, but picking up a lot of speed. We talked about a lot the advent of 12 and 13 personnel packages. 12 personnel packages just means one running back, two tight ends. 13, one running back, three tight ends. You have teams condensed for the run. You hit them down the field with passing. It only works if you have tight ends that are good blockers and receivers. Ferguson, and we've done a number of film reviews on this, has proven to be both. So obviously it was a great selection by the Rams at integrating him into the offense successfully. But let's give some credit here to Sean McVay. And I think what he did in terms of making this statement and the way he handled it is really important. Because one of the things that can happen, and I've played college football and I've lived this environment a few times where you have a young player that kind of emerges the middle of a season who didn't really play at all. And suddenly your offense, your team, whatever it may be, gets a lot better. There's usually some rumblings about, where is this guy? Why haven't we played this guy the entire year? What's been going on here? And Sean McVay goes right out here and says, listen, I was an idiot. I should have played him well before that. And whether he was or not doesn't matter. And just with this move right here, the self-deprecating statement saying, listen, I was wrong. Ferguson was doing good things for us. I should have seen it much, much earlier. It's doing good things on the scout team. And during preseason, too, we did some film reviews of Ferguson. We saw the potential there, too. I'm sure a lot of the Rams players and coaches did as well. But the reality is Sean McVay coming out in public and saying, listen, I'm an idiot. And we know Sean McVay's not an idiot. He's one of the smartest coaches. He may be the smartest coach in football, right? Super Bowl champion, right? He's may end up in the Hall of Fame someday. He's on the trajectory as a head coach. Long way to go, of course, but I mean, he's absolutely outstanding. The reality is by him coming out and saying, listen, I'm an idiot. I was stupid. I should have played him much earlier because he was doing great things. It sets the tone to the rest of the team. It's the humiliating, the self-deprecating, the sort of self-humiliation saying, listen, I screwed up. That sets the attitude. It lets the other players know, listen, our genius coach, which Sean McVay has that label, he makes mistakes. He's flawed, and he understands that and recognizes that, and he's authentic about it. One of the problems with a Bill Belichick, who I think is really the only comparison to Sean McVay in terms of modern NFL history, in terms of just raw intellect and football firepower, is that during the end of his time with the Patriots, because it was a new era, there were a lot of New England players that didn't really buy into the mystique, right? Because they hadn't been around, right? If you're 22 years old and you play for the Patriots in 2022, you started watching football like in 2015, right? You missed half the dynasty, right? You missed a lot of the craziest Belichick stuff. And so you weren't really bought into it. Right now, Sean McVay, because of his humility, because of his authenticity, he gets players bought into it. And I think that's really important. And I think it's a good sign for the Rams going forward. But the most important thing for the Rams going forward is how they're playing. And let's pull up this graphic here, courtesy of True Media Mize, if you don't mind. And this is the offensive total EPA throughout the entire season going down. And you can see right there, over the last three games, the three best seasons, or the three best games, the best three-game stretch by far. And it perfectly coincides with Ferguson getting significantly more playing time. In fact, the last 2 weeks, the best total EPA. Their only game that's even close was week 2 against the Tennessee Titans. But you can see the Rams offense, they're playing great. They're playing better. better, and it perfectly coincides with Ferguson getting more reps. In fact, he got his first start against the San Francisco 49ers last week, and lo and behold, their highest offensive EPA of the season. Now, obviously, correlation doesn't necessarily 100% relate to causation here, but there is some validity to Ferguson gets more playing time, more 12 and 13 personnel usage, and what we see on the broadcast of, hey, listen, this kid is good, this offense is great. And lo and behold, the Rams are playing better based on the analytics that you see on the screen. And I think this is why the Rams, again, I think are the smartest team in football. They don't take themselves too seriously in terms of Sean McVay. They realize their mistakes and their flaws, but they also do the smart things, right? There are some coaches that are stuck in their ways. They're very stubborn. They're arrogant, and they end up losing. The Rams are willing to change, but they're willing to change in a way that they don't take it too seriously amongst themselves. They don't think of themselves as geniuses, and Sean McVay being the example here. They recognize their flaws, and they're reacting to the data just like we all are. And I think that's a key part because, again, it's not just making the tactical strategic decisions, playing Ferguson more. That's an A-plus move, but it's also being a leader of men and having that right mentality in front of your players. And Sean McVay has that perfectly handled as well. I think those two aspects together speak to a really bright future this season and in upcoming seasons as well for the Rams. All right, Miles, I'm curious your thoughts on all things Los Angeles Rams. But first, Rams fans, the Ramley, if you will, in the comment section below. Massive matchup this weekend. I tell you what, it is going to be a blast to watch this one. Rams, Seahawks for supremacy, at least for right now, in the NFC West. Give us your prediction, final score, how you think it's going to settle up. Los Angeles Rams versus Seattle Seahawks. Put it in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. Give us your thoughts on all things Rams.
Yeah, Nick, I think this is, looking really good, especially the Rams Ferguson, what he's been able to bring to the table here. But I want to bring one thing to note is when you look at these teams that they've been playing well against as well, there's a couple of games in here where you see like high, EPAs for the Rams, like versus the Titans week 2. Like, of course, they're going to have a high one. But the last 3 weeks, they've played against some formidable defenses, especially. Maybe not the teams as a whole, but the defenses in tow were pretty decent teams. Look at the Jaguars. They're, a middle of the road, a upper middle tier defense for this team. They got a lot of young guys, a lot of really talented players on their defense. The Saints, their offense, not very good. They were good last week, but the Saints, when this team was playing them, not super good. Their defense, though, a lot of guys, a lot of dudes on the Saints defense, and even despite the the shortcomings of the offense, this defense is ranked above in the top 15 of defenses in the NFL right now. And then we all know the 49ers, great team, a lot of solid players all around the ball. So for them to keep getting better and for Ferguson, to making these impacts, having better and better weeks against solid teams, I think that's really important because if he would have come out week 2 versus the Titans and had a really big game, got 100 receiving yards, a couple touchdowns, you'd be like, it's against the Titans. Come on, how good is this guy really? Well, when it's against 3 back-to-back-to-back solid teams, above average defenses, it makes you feel like there's something here. It's actually real. So I like to point that part out as when I was looking at this, what it means to me. So I really like that aspect here. I think this just shows Sean McVay's comments are genuine. Of course, he's a little bit self-deprecating to show the humility and stuff like that. But he's like, hey, this guy's really, really good, and we probably need to get him involved a little bit earlier. And as we see the spark, this 13 personnel, we did a video about that a little bit earlier this season, a couple weeks ago, just talking about the install of it and how it's been used in this team. It's been used more and more and more. I think it's because a guy like Ferguson, this, due to the offensive success, this team looking really, really solid. So kudos to McVay, kudos to the Rams. I think this team's looking really good. And it's like you said, this is a long road we've been down. Talking about, the first noticing of Ferguson in the preseason, a little bit of flashes here and there, start to implement them, starts a full game, has a big flash. Now we're seeing back-to-back really big weeks for him as well. And this is something impressive with the Rams. I think this is that little niche nuance that they find mid-season all the time that separates them from everybody else. This is why the good teams are really good. They've got guys like Sean McVay who say, hey, let me find this throughout the season. The team isn't ever finished. We got to keep getting bigger and better. And the addition of a guy like Ferguson more often in the offense definitely is something that they needed to have done.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with everything you said there. Let's put a bow on this thing here and talk about the matchup this weekend. Let's pull up the graphic courtesy of ESPN. Look at the matchup here. So, courtesy of ESPN Analytics, the Rams sit as a 60-40% chance to win. I think that's interesting. A lot of people look at Seattle and how dominant they've been, certainly hyper efficient. But if you look at the Seahawks, it's interesting. And I've looked at a lot of film of Seattle just covering them and some of their opposition, is they were a big play machine. They were not very methodical, right? They'll have 3 yard one, 1 yard run, 2 yard pass, 60-yard touchdown, and then a fumble return for a touchdown. And then they'll be back on offense, and then they'll be, 30-yard play, 25-yard touchdown, and their next 6 plays won't get a foot, right? It's one of those things, but at that point, they just big played you to death. They're up 21-0, right? That's kind of how they play. They've been really good at it. The Rams are much more methodical, and I think methodical style of football tends to win out, certainly in the second half of the season. And I think that's what the analytics folks see, and the odds makers see that as well. The Rams open up as a 2.5 point home favorite. That's basically straight even, but money has moved to the Rams. It's shifted to a 3.5, which isn't an insignificant shift since both teams are 7-2 and the Seahawks are good. So obviously the fact that the spread shifted 1 point in the Rams' favor, you can see the ESPN Bet Sportsbook's odds there at the bottom. The implied probability money line -175 is about 60%. So basically you look at a 60-40 chance for the Rams to win based on the analytics and the odds makers, which is really darn close. Of course, 60-40 could almost a coin flip. But the reality is, despite the hype around Seattle, the methodical nature and the intelligence of Sean McVay, their personnel grouping, and of course the great play of Matthew Stafford, it puts Los Angeles as the favorite, and I honestly think they've got the best chance to win this game.